Welcome, I'm Kinetic Symphony. This is Dave. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the supernatural. Case file number 1730, written by Flypaperforfreaks. Cemetery Tune, A Mystery by Moon. 20-something years ago, when I was at university with my boyfriend at the time, I was on our way home from the movies, not quite ready to call it a night. He'd spill a drink on his shirt and didn't want to go out anywhere public, so our options were pretty limited. It's important to note that we were driving in his car, which was a beat-up old thing from circa 1980. Its audio system didn't work, so he had a tape deck sitting in the back seat that he played his music through. The tape deck seemed about as old as the car. You had to really push down the buttons hard to play, rewind, fast forward the music. We were listening to Live Secret, Samadhi, and just letting the tape play through. As we drove along, we got the idea that it might be fun to check out a cemetery we had just passed. We were that bored, okay? We stopped the car, reached into the back seat, and pushed stop on the tape deck, mid-song, which happened to be the 8th track, Turn My Head. I remembered this clearly because I don't particularly like that song. I was glad we didn't have to hear the whole thing. We locked the car and went into the cemetery. After exploring for about 10 minutes, we headed back to the car, mainly because security had spotted us. We unlocked it, got in, reached into the back, pushed on the play button, and began to drive off. The song, Ghost, started up from the beginning of the track, and we remarked on how it was kind of appropriate given where we had just been. The next track played, and the next, and then Turn My Head started playing. It took me a minute before I realized, wasn't that the song we had been in the middle of listening to when we stopped the tape? Ghost is the 5th song. If we had accidentally bumped the rewind button when we stopped the tape, wouldn't it have rewound all the way through to the start of the tape? Why would it just stop at the start of the 5th song, which happened to be called Ghost? The car was still locked, and we hadn't been gone long. Who could have gotten into the car to mess with it, and why? Now, I'm not suggesting it was anything supernatural, but to this day, he and I have not been able to work out how this could have happened. Any ideas, seriously? Case file 1730, Cemetery Tune, A Mystery by Moon. Does anyone else find cemeteries beautiful? There's an aspect to them that, okay, it's a melancholic note where people died, but it's also evidence that they lived, that so many people came and went. But they had an impact on the material world, and that is something. It's a place to remember people. Not mourn them or fear their spirits, if any linger behind. Though in this case, I think it was more of a tongue-in-cheek joke that the spirit or spirits in the area were playing. Like, they were perusing the tape and saying, yo, there's a title called Ghost, let's put it on that one. Rewind it to that point. Just to mess with, it's like a literally ghost prank tube. If I was a ghost, and all consciously aware, that is what I would do. Prank people, not maliciously. Again, always specify that. I wouldn't be cruel, but I would definitely mess with people. So be warned if you ever come into my house after I die. There's going to be shenanigans going on. Case file number 1731, written by stringofmade, the cat I adore who glitched through the door. I have to feed the old man cat behind a closed door to keep the young fat cats from stealing his food. This morning, I do admit the door wasn't fully closed, but that's not a problem because the fats have learned not to push through because they're not getting any, and the old man is no longer lucid, strong, or agile enough to open the door even when cracked. So the door was about 2 fingers open when he was done eating. Because he's been kneading the box, as soon as he's done eating, I did not hesitate to follow him to the door. My eyes did leave him, but not the door, since that was my destination. But he wasn't at the door when I got there. I looked around the room for him, confused, then figured he just took a sharp right into a hidey hole. I opened the door, which was still just 2 fingers open. Door swings in, and there he was on the other side, acting like he was confused, getting ready to make his feeble attempts to squeeze in. It's worth noting that the door does have a hitch that makes it loud and a little more difficult to swing open. So unless he's narrow enough and had a moment of lucidity, great enough to escape, I would have seen and heard the door swing. Or I fed a ghost cat, or my cat just glitched through the door. Case file 1731, The cat I adore who glitched through the door. The fats. The fatties. I definitely laughed too hard too many times. I had to retake that line so many times to get that right. I don't know how people do it. Actors on comedy shows where the lines are so funny. I could never pull it off. I guess there's blooper reels like in Friends where, Monica, Chandler, they're always busting out laughing because it's just too funny. How do actors do it professionally? Impressive. And I think cats are able to phase through all over the place, but I don't think they're aware of that ability. And it can only happen sight unseen. Case file number 1732, written by cybergirljpg. Antique Maze and My Phone's Lost Days. A year or so ago, I visited an antique store in my neighborhood that I frequented relatively often. I use the word antique loosely, as this particular store was run by a family that owned the building they were in and had a habit of purchasing people's estates sight unseen, so you can imagine how packed this place is. The store is near impossible to navigate, as they have piles and piles of disorganized merchandise that is similarly set to the antique shop episode of Nathan For You. This store was also known to service a large portion of my city's local theaters for things like costumes and props. I can't stress enough that this place was filled to the brim with products that have been sitting for well over 20 years. I am with my husband looking through a bin of old maps on one side of their basement. I do a quick look around the general area I'm standing near, as this basement has incredibly low ceilings that my husband is too tall to maneuver comfortably, and a maze of shelves of miscellaneous metalware, accented by a back wall lined with Easter bunny costumes that were truly terrifying to me, ultimately discouraging me from looking any further into this basement. We leave the basement and I'm looking around at random things on the upper level. I go to pull my phone out to take a picture of something, but my phone isn't in my pocket. I begin to retrace my steps as I realize this is probably the worst place to lose my phone. I return to the basement with the creepy costumes and retrace my steps there. The area I was in was maybe 20 square feet, but this basement expands throughout what is essentially a quarter of a city block under this building. I ask my husband to call me, but my phone is on vibrate. Whatever little sound is being silenced by the insane amount of costumes and fabric down here. I expanded my search in the basement with my husband, continuing to call me, stepping over old milk jugs, rotary telephones, thinking of any obsolete technology, and it was in this basement, and I was stepping over it. I eventually found my phone sitting on a high shelf towards the back of the room, an area I had initially visited and was difficult to get to on a shelf, where the items on top weren't exactly visible to me. I don't know how it got there, but it certainly wasn't myself or my husband that put it there, as we were together the entire time. I left with the willies and haven't been back there since. Case notes file 1732. Antique Maze and My Phone's Lost Days. Sounds like a pretty cool shop, one that I would love to peruse. Find those antique lamps. I love the vibe of those old style lamps. Just peaceful. Warm. But I'm honestly not sure of the cause in this one. A de-rendered object, okay, but it reappearing up top there? If it is an error correction code, it applied so quickly. Normally objects don't return that fast. Maybe another spirit prankster? Could be. Now time for the joke of the day. And it's a full story. My little guy is 3.5 and normally his granddad does childcare for us 3 days a week, while I work from home. My dad wasn't feeling well, so I told him to stay home. I'll put in sick and hang out with the little guy today. Daddy and buddy movie day on the couch as soon as we get our chores done. So my little guy helped me take out the garbage and recycling, take the cans to the curb and water the lawn. It was still early-ish morning, but where I live it's already hot by 10 a.m. and the humidity is typically around 80%, so an outdoor sauna. We came back in sweating and I said, "You were a big help, thanks. Do you want anything to drink, buddy?" He tells me no. I say, "Are you sure? It was hot and I'm thirsty." He started to say no, then immediately stops, looks me dead in the eye, and says, "Hi, Thirsty. I'm kid's name. Nice to meet you." I am undone. He is the master of dad jokes. I think I actually startled him with how much I laughed. Dad jokes are wonderful. I hope to have many in my repertoire for when I become a dad.